Michelle Davis had not looked in a full-length mirror in 3 years. She navigated her small apartment by muscle memory, keeping her eyes down, avoiding the reflective surfaces that might force her to confront what she had become. At 35 years old and weighing 37 pounds, she had spent the last 5 years as a prisoner in her own body, trapped not just by her physical limitations, but by the shame and fear that had grown alongside her weight until both seemed impossible to overcome. The letter she had written to Oprah had been her first attempt at communication with the outside world in months. Sitting at her computer at 2 a.m., wearing the same oversized sweatshirt she had lived in for weeks, Michelle had tried to explain what it felt like to disappear from your own life 1 pound, 1 fear, 1 avoided invitation at a time. How do you tell someone that you've become afraid of the world, afraid of judgment, afraid of taking up space in a society that seems to have no place for bodies like yours? Getting to the studio had required more courage than Michelle had summoned in years. She had ordered clothes online specifically for this day, the first new clothing she had bought in 2 years. The black dress was designed to hide and minimize, but even so, Michelle felt exposed, vulnerable, like every light and camera in the studio was cataloging her failures. She sat in the back row of the Oprah Winfrey Show audience, hoping to blend into the background, to be invisible in the way she had perfected over the past 5 years. Today's show theme was breaking through barriers, and Oprah was discussing people who had overcome seemingly impossible obstacles to reclaim their lives. Michelle had been invited as part of the audience after the show's producers had been moved by her letter. But she wasn't supposed to be a featured guest. She was just supposed to listen to other people's stories of transformation, to find inspiration in their courage, and maybe, just maybe, to believe that change was possible for someone like her too. But as Oprah moved through the audience sharing stories of people who had broken through their limitations, Michelle felt the familiar tightness in her chest that came whenever she was reminded of all the dreams she had abandoned, all the life she had stopped living, because she believed she was too big, too much, too visible in all the wrong ways. Michelle thought about the woman she used to be, confident, social, ambitious. She had been a graphic designer with her own small business, someone who went to dinner parties and movies and concerts, someone who dated and laughed and believed that anything was possible. That woman felt like a stranger now, like someone Michelle had known briefly a lifetime ago. The moment that changed everything came when Oprah asked the audience a question that seemed to slice straight through to Michelle's deepest fears. How many of you feel like you've lost yourself, like the person you used to be is trapped inside a life you don't recognize? Michelle's hand went up before she could stop herself. Around her, other hands were raised too. But something about the desperation in Michelle's posture, the way she seemed to be trying to disappear even while raising her hand, caught Oprah's attention. She walked toward the back of the studio with that intuitive grace that had made her a healer as much as an entertainer, understanding somehow that this woman's story needed to be heard. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Oprah asked, and Michelle felt the weight of hundreds of eyes turning toward her, felt the familiar panic that came whenever she became the center of attention. "Michelle," she whispered, her voice barely audible even with the microphone Oprah had brought over. "Michelle Davis. Michelle, tell us about the person you used to be," Oprah said, sitting down in a chair that had been quickly brought to Michelle's row, understanding that this conversation would need time and gentleness to unfold. Michelle looked around the studio, at all the faces focused on her with curiosity rather than judgment, and felt something crack inside her chest. For 5 years, she had been silent about her struggle, isolated in her shame. But something about Oprah's presence, about the safety of being heard without having to explain herself first, made the words begin to flow. "I used to be someone," Michelle said, her voice growing stronger as she found her rhythm. "I had a graphic design business, clients who respected my work, friends who invited me places. I used to go dancing, travel, date. I used to believe I deserved good things." "What happened to that woman?" Oprah asked gently. Michelle was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to explain the slow erosion of a life, the way weight gain and withdrawal had fed each other until both became overwhelming. She disappeared one excuse at a time, Michelle said finally. First, I stopped going to parties because I felt too self-conscious. Then I stopped dating because I convinced myself nobody could want someone like me. Then I stopped seeing friends because it was easier to cancel plans than to deal with their worried looks or helpful suggestions. The studio was quiet, sensing that they were hearing about something more complex than simple weight gain. This was about Eileen, about shame, about the way fear can grow until it consumes everything else. I started working from home, which seemed like a blessing at first, Michelle continued. I could avoid the stares, the comments, the feeling like I was taking up too much space everywhere I went. But working from home became hiding from home. And hiding became my whole life. How long has it been since you've really been out in the world? Oprah asked. 5 years, Michelle replied, and the number seemed to hang in the air like an indictment. 5 years since I've been to a restaurant, a movie, a social gathering. 5 years since I've allowed myself to exist in public without feeling like I was inconveniencing everyone around me. The camera caught the moment when Michelle's isolation became real for the studio audience, when they understood that this wasn't just about weight, but about a woman who had spent 5 years believing she didn't deserve to take up space in the world. Michelle, Oprah said, what do you see when you look in the mirror? That's when Michelle finally broke down completely. The question hit her like a physical force, bringing up years of avoided reflections, of mirrors covered or removed, of a relationship with her own image that had become so painful she had simply stopped looking. I don't look in mirrors, she whispered through tears. I can't. When I see myself, all I see is failure. I see someone who let everything go, who gave up on herself so completely that she forgot how to exist in the world. The studio was completely silent now, witnessing a level of pain that went far beyond physical appearance to the very core of self-worth. I used to be beautiful, Michelle continued, her voice breaking. Not because of how I looked, but because of how I felt about myself, how I moved through the world with confidence and joy. Now I don't know who I am anymore. I look in the mirror, and I don't recognize the person staring back at me. Oprah leaned forward, her voice carrying the weight of someone who understood that some conversations can change the direction of a life. Michelle, what would you say to that woman in the mirror if you could see past the fear? Michelle looked up at Oprah, tears streaming down her face, and for a moment the shame that had defined her for 5 years was replaced by something else, a flicker of the confidence she used to have, a glimpse of the woman she used to be. I would tell her I'm sorry, Michelle said, her voice growing stronger. I would tell her I'm sorry for abandoning her, for deciding she wasn't worth fighting for letting fear make all the decisions about how she gets to live. And what would you want to say to women who might be watching this, who might be struggling with their own version of hiding from the world? Michelle looked directly into the camera, speaking not just to an audience, but to every person who had ever felt too big, too much, too visible in all the wrong ways. I would tell them that we deserve to exist, she said, her voice carrying the conviction of someone who was remembering their own worth, even as they spoke. We deserve to take up space, to be seen, to participate in life. We deserve love and friendship and adventure and joy, regardless of what we weigh or how we look. The studio audience began to react, not with pity but with recognition, understanding that Michelle was speaking not just about weight, but about the fundamental human right to exist without shame. That's when Oprah made a decision that would transform not just the rest of the show, but the rest of Michelle's life. Michelle, she said, what if I told you that you don't have to figure this out alone? What if I told you that there are people who specialize in helping people reclaim their lives, their health, their confidence? She gestured toward the wings of the studio, and 2 people walked out who would become central to Michelle's transformation. I'd like you to meet Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Oprah said, as a warm professional woman in her 40s approached. She's a physician who specializes in comprehensive weight management, Not just diet and exercise, but addressing the emotional and psychological factors that contribute to weight gain and social isolation. Dr. Mitchell approached Michelle with the same warmth that had characterized everyone else's response. Michelle, what I heard in your story is someone who hasn't just gained weight, but who has lost connection to herself, to others, to the activities that used to bring her joy. We're going to work together to rebuild all of those connections. Oprah continued the introductions. And this is Marcus Johnson, a personal trainer who works specifically with people who are starting their fitness journey from a place of fear and shame. He understands that the first step isn't physical, it's emotional. Marcus, a fit but gentle man with a warm smile, knelt down beside Michelle's chair. Michelle, we're not going to start with a gym or a diet. We're going to start with helping you remember that your body deserves care and respect, regardless of its size. But more than that, Oprah said, I want to offer you something else. I want to offer you a year of comprehensive support, medical care, nutritional guidance, fitness training, therapy, and most importantly, a community of people who are committed to your success. The audience began to understand the scope of what Oprah was offering. This wasn't just about weight loss. It was about rebuilding a life, reconstructing an identity, helping someone remember how to exist in the world without fear. But the support didn't stop there. From the audience, a voice called out, I'd like to be part of Michelle's support system too. The camera swung toward the voice, revealing a middle-aged woman who had stood up from her seat in the middle section. My name is Jennifer Thompson, the woman said, walking toward the front of the studio. I lost 120 pounds 3 years ago, and I know how isolating this journey can feel. I'd like to offer to be Michelle's workout buddy, her accountability partner, her friend through this process. Then another woman stood up. I'm Dr. Lisa Rodriguez, a therapist who specializes in body image and self-esteem. I'd like to offer my services to help Michelle work through the emotional aspects of this transformation. What happened next was something that no television producer could have scripted. One by one, audience members began standing up, offering different forms of support. A nutritionist offered meal planning services. A clothing store owner offered to provide a complete wardrobe as Michelle's size changed. A gym owner offered unlimited access to his facility, including private training sessions. Oprah watched in amazement as her studio audience transformed into an instant support network for a woman who had spent 5 years believing she had to face her challenges alone. Michelle, Oprah said, returning to her side, how does it feel to discover that you're not alone in this? Michelle looked around the studio, at faces that had been strangers an hour ago, and now felt like family, at professionals offering their expertise, at people volunteering to be part of her journey back to herself. I feel like I remember something I had forgotten, she said, her voice steady despite her tears. I feel like I remember that I'm worth fighting for, that my life is worth reclaiming. The show continued for another 20 minutes, with Dr. Mitchell and Marcus explaining their approach to sustainable lifestyle change, with audience members sharing their own stories of transformation, with Oprah facilitating conversations about body image, self-worth, and the courage required to change your life. But the most powerful moment came when Oprah asked Michelle to make a commitment, not to losing weight, but to showing up for herself. Michelle, Oprah said, I want you to make me a promise. I want you to promise that you'll participate in your own life again, that you'll stop hiding, stop shrinking, stop apologizing for existing. Michelle looked around the studio one more time, at the team of people who had committed to supporting her, at the audience members who had shown her that she wasn't alone, at Oprah who had created the space for this transformation to begin. I promise, she said, and for the first time in 5 years, Michelle Davis made a promise she believed she could keep. The episode aired 6 weeks later, and the response was unprecedented. The Oprah Winfrey Show received over 150,000 letters from viewers sharing their own stories of isolation, body shame, and the courage to seek help. Weight loss clinics and therapy practices reported surges in people seeking support for emotional eating and body image issues. But perhaps the most meaningful response came from Michelle herself. 3 months after the show aired, she sent Oprah a photo, not a before and after weight loss picture, but a picture of herself at a restaurant with Jennifer Thompson, her new workout buddy and friend. "Dear Oprah," she wrote in her letter, "I wanted you to show you proof that I kept my promise. This is me participating in my own life again." The woman in this picture has lost 45 pounds in 3 months. But more importantly, she's found the courage to exist in public again. She described how Dr. Mitchell had helped her understand that her weight gain was connected to untreated depression and anxiety, how therapy with Dr. Rodriguez had helped her separate her worth from her appearance, how Marcus had taught her that exercise could be joyful rather than punitive. But the biggest change, Michelle wrote, is that I look in mirrors now, not because I love what I see yet, but because I'm no longer afraid of the woman looking back at me. I'm getting to know her again, and I'm remembering why she deserves love and care and a full life. 6 months later, Michelle was featured in a follow-up episode of The Oprah Winfrey Show. She appeared not as someone still seeking help, but as someone who had become an inspiration to others. She had lost 89 pounds, but more importantly, she had gained back her life. "The weight loss is wonderful," Michelle told Oprah during her return visit. "But the real transformation is in how I see myself, how I move through the world, how I interact with other people. I'm not hiding anymore." She had started a support group for people struggling with weight and isolation, using her own experience to help others find the courage to seek help and rebuild their lives. Jennifer Thompson had become not just her workout buddy, but her business partner in this new venture. "What Michelle taught me," Jennifer said during the follow-up show, "is that transformation isn't just about changing your body. It's about changing your relationship with yourself, with other people, with the world around you." A year later, Michelle Davis had lost 127 pounds and gained something far more valuable, her life back. She had reopened her graphic design business, expanded her social circle, started dating again, and become an advocate for body positivity and mental health awareness. "The most important thing I learned," Michelle reflects now, "is that hiding from the world doesn't protect you from judgment. It just protects you from joy, from connection, from all the good things that make life worth living." She still works with Dr. Mitchell and Marcus, but now as someone maintaining her health rather than someone desperately seeking change. She has become a mentor in the support group she started, helping other people find the courage to stop hiding and start living. The team that formed around Michelle in that studio continues to work together, having discovered that supporting one person's transformation had created something beautiful, a model for how communities can wrap around individuals who need help, how professional expertise combined with personal support can create sustainable change. "I thought I was broken beyond repair," Michelle says, looking back on that day in the studio. "But what I learned is that I wasn't broken, I was just disconnected. From myself, from other people, from the belief that I deserved good things." The weight loss was important, but reconnecting with life was everything. 5 years later, Michelle Davis weighs 65 pounds and has maintained her weight loss through continued support, healthy habits, and most importantly, through her commitment to participating fully in her own life. She speaks at conferences about weight, body image, and mental health, but her message is always the same: you deserve to exist without shame. You deserve to take up space. You deserve help, support, love, and a life filled with joy. The mirror in her apartment now reflects someone she recognizes, not because she's returned to the exact person she was before, but because she's become someone new, someone who understands that transformation is possible at any size, at any age, with the right support and the courage to stop hiding. Because sometimes the most powerful stories aren't about becoming someone different, but about remembering who you always were underneath the fear and shame. Sometimes transformation isn't about changing everything, but about reconnecting with the parts of yourself that never actually disappeared. They were just waiting for you to be brave enough to look in the mirror and say hello again. The woman who was afraid to exist in public now helps others find the courage to step into the light. The woman who thought she was too much has learned that she was exactly enough. And the woman who spent 5 years hiding has discovered that the world is better when she's visible, when she takes up space, when she shows up fully as herself.